She stood in court and called me deadweight. Said I was lucky she even let me stay in the house. Her lawyer laughed, the judge looked bored, and for a moment, I believed them. But they didn't know what I had in my bag. 10 years of receipts, buried truths, and one quiet plan to flip her perfect empire upside down. If you've ever felt erased in someone else's success story or quietly built something no one believed in, share your journey below. Your story might be the truth someone else needs. My name is Julian Ror, and I'm 41 years old, and for a long time I was the invisible architect behind someone else's empire. It crept up on me slowly, the erasure. At first, it was little things. Camille forgetting to mention my name when talking about a project we brainstormed together, or brushing off a design idea I offered only to pitch it herself later, like it had come to her in a dream. I told myself it didn't matter, that we were a team, and the wins were shared, even if the applause only went one. But deep down, I felt a shift, a slow, deliberate freezing out. Camille used to call me her quiet genius, back when we were still hungry, still building from the ground up. I'd sit at the kitchen table sketching out showroom layouts or typing pitch decks while she rehearsed speeches. She loved the way I saw things, clean lines, open spaces, flow that made people feel something. She said my designs gave her campaign's soul. That was a long time ago. Somewhere along the way, I became the background extra in our own story. The guy who parked the car, made sure the RSVPs were right, and kept the wine flowing while she shined. It wasn't loud. It wasn't cruel. It was worse. It was quiet and constant. Death by 1,000 omissions. I wasn't being mistreated. I was being forgotten. Smiled. Stepped over. There was one night that burned it all in. A gala. Not the first, not the biggest. Just another glittering event Camille had planned for one of her new investors. I'd spent weeks helping her prepare, sourcing vendors, designing the lighting layout, even choosing the freaking napkin folds because she couldn't decide. I didn't care about the credit. I just wanted it to go well. For her. For us. The room was full of people. Startup founders, local press, clients, influencers. She looked incredible, standing under those lights. Confident. Powerful. And then she took the mic. She started her speech by thanking her team, her assistant, her PR rep, her branding consultant. Then she thanked the catering crew, the venue staff, even the intern who handled the flower arrangements. But not me. Not a glance, not a nod. Like I didn't exist. I stood there, holding a glass of champagne I didn't want, surrounded by people clapping, smiling, laughing. I felt like the walls were closing in. My name was nowhere in her mouth, and in that moment I realized. It hadn't been for a long time. She didn't forget. She chose. She chose to leave me out. To edit me from the story of her success. And the worst part? No one noticed. Not even the people who knew how much I'd helped. I wasn't the husband. I was the guy by the bar, who looked a little too proud for someone who hadn't been introduced. That night, something snapped in me. Not loud, not violent, just final. I couldn't keep doing it. Couldn't keep being the shadow she cast without ever acknowledging it. I wasn't angry, not at first. Just hollow. Cold. I went home before the party ended and sat in the dark, heart pounding, staring at the ceiling. That was the night I stopped being hers. The night I started planning how to take myself back. The days after the gala felt like moving through fog. I didn't fight with Camille. I didn't confront her or ask why she left me out. What was the point? She would have had some polished answer, some excuse wrapped in charm. Instead, went quiet. But not still. That silence became my starting point. My space to breathe. My chance to rebuild. Something of my own. It started with a single freelance project. A struggling coffee brand needed help with its visual identity. A friend of a friend reached out, desperate. I said yes, under a different name. Not because I was hiding, but because I wanted to work without her shadow following me, without the weight of her reputation coloring mine. I created a new alias, a clean slate, and signed the design files as Ror Designs. Just 3 letters and a sharp logo. No bio, no backstory, just work. That first job felt electric. I designed their new packaging, restructured their website, even helped with the physical layout of their new flagship cafe. And it worked. Sales picked up, customers noticed. The owner sent me a thank you note that felt more sincere than anything Camille had said to me in years. That was the moment I realized I hadn't disappeared. I'd just been muted. Word spread quietly. Another client came in, then another. A tech startup that couldn't afford a big agency. A boutique furniture company looking for a brand refresh. I didn't advertise. I didn't network. I just kept producing. Clean, simple, honest work. And slowly, Ror Designs became something real. Most nights, I stayed up late in the spare room we called an office, sketching logos by hand, drafting layout plans, building pitch decks. While Camille slept in the master bedroom or flew off to conferences, I worked. My designs began appearing in more and more places. On brochures, storefronts, social media campaigns. I walked past one of them downtown once, a clothing boutique with a minimalist black sign I'd designed, and felt this strange rush, like I was watching someone else's dream come true. A few clients turned into regulars. Then a few regulars brought referrals. I started organizing my invoices, keeping track of contributions. Not for revenge, not yet. Just for me. Proof that I was more than the footnote Camille had made me out to be. I built systems, templates, scaled things quietly. And the irony? Some of those early clients, those little startups and passion projects I helped stabilize, ended up catching the attention of Camille's investors. I watched it happen from the sidelines. She'd show me articles at breakfast, bragging about a promising new partner or an innovative founder. I'd nod, smile, sip my coffee, and remember how I'd helped that same founder secure their seed funding by redesigning their investor decks. Camille had no idea that the very foundation of her growth, her empire, was supported by work I'd done behind the scenes. I never corrected her, never gloated, never hinted. I just kept going, kept designing, kept building. I wasn't chasing recognition. I was chasing clarity. I wanted to prove, if only to myself, that I was still capable, that I had something real to offer, that I didn't need her stage lights to make something shine. It wasn't about pride. It was survival, emotional survival. I needed to build something that was mine, something untouched by her control or her spotlight. So I kept receipts, tracked hours, logged files. I archived every proof of concept, every invoice, every result. Not because I planned to use them, but because I was tired of being invisible, even to myself. By the time a year passed, Ror Designs had supported over a dozen companies. And no one knew. No awards, no interviews, just quiet, effective work. And in that silence, I started to feel whole again. Not loud, not celebrated, but full. I didn't need credit. I just needed to know I could stand on my own 2 feet again. And I did. The divorce papers came on a Tuesday. No warning, no conversation. Just a courier at the front door and a thick envelope with my name typed across it like a death certificate. Camille didn't even hand it to me herself. She was in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through her phone while I stood there with the papers in my hand. She didn't say a word. She didn't need to. I'd already been erased. This was just the final sweep. Inside the envelope was a list of demands so bold it didn't even sting at first. Full custody of the house, complete ownership of the business, all stock holdings under her name, even the car. Her lawyer, some guy named Bellamy with a reputation for precision strikes, had included a narrative too. It painted me as dead weight. A dependent, a man who constructed nothing and benefited solely from the generosity of his entrepreneurial spouse. I read it 3 times, each line sharper than the last. She said she'd carried me, that I was uninvolved, uninvested, and incapable of building anything of his own. She wrote that. Camille. The woman who used to leave sticky notes on my designs with hearts in the corner. I didn't yell. I didn't fight. I just called Elise. Elise wasn't flashy. No designer suits or dramatic courtroom speeches. But she had a mind like a steel trap and a tone that made people sit up straighter. I handed her everything. My files, my binders, years of saved emails, drafts, invoices, design documents, business decks with my name scrubbed out by Camille's branding team. Elise didn't say much that first day, just nodded slowly and said, "Let's make a map." We spent weeks putting the case together. Every client I'd helped under Ror Designs, every project that had indirectly benefited Camille's business. We pulled financial records, intellectual property drafts, meeting notes. We linked startup funding rounds back to my campaign decks. We highlighted moments where Camille's public wins directly aligned with my private work. Elise cross-referenced timelines, matched timestamps, built charts. She was relentless. And underneath it all, I felt something growing in me I hadn't felt in years. Not anger, not vengeance, certainty. The court date came fast. I remember walking into that room feeling like a ghost wearing a suit. Camille sat on the other side with Bellamy, all ice and confidence. She didn't look at me, just stared ahead like I wasn't even there. That first day was rough. Bellamy opened strong, painting a picture of me as a passive partner who'd coasted on Camille's success. He used phrases like, burden to growth, and emotionally dependent. Camille sat there, nodding like it was all just unfortunate but true. They had the narrative down, cold. I let them have their turn. Then it was ours. Elise stood up, calm as ever, and started unpacking the story. Not with drama, with evidence. She introduced the portfolio. Several thick binders, each labeled by year. Contracts, architectural drafts, branding decks, internal communications, emails with timestamps, wire transfers tied to Camille's company that had originated through my personal consulting work. She laid it out brick by brick, quite sharp, unshakable. Then she looked at me and nodded. I stood, hands not shaking, voice steady. I opened the first binder and started reading. Not the whole thing, just key excerpts. This email chain showing I designed the event space, that invoice proving I ghost wrote a major pitch, that photo of me setting up the investor meeting she later claimed as hers. One by one, I dropped the receipts. Years of work laid out for the judge to see, and every page I turned felt like reclaiming something that had been stolen, piece by... Camille didn't interrupt, she didn't flinch, but I saw it, the smallest flicker in her eyes, like a mirror cracking. Bellamy looked rattled. He tried to object, tried to pivot, but Elise was ready. She anticipated everything, matched every statement with documentation. By the end of the day, the courtroom had shifted. Reporters were scribbling notes, the judge was highlighting pages in my binder, and Camille was sitting a little lower in her seat. I didn't gloat, didn't smirk. I just sat back down and felt the weight in my chest ease, like I'd finally exhaled after holding my breath for a decade. The silence after that wasn't empty, it was full. I didn't know what the ruling would be, but I knew the story had changed. And this time, it had my name in it. Outside the courtroom, the air felt charged. Elise and I sat on a wooden bench in the hallway, the heavy doors closed behind us. She was flipping through her notes again, calm and focused like always. I sat still, barely noticing the buzz that had started to ripple around us. But then I saw it. A young guy in a frayed tie, notepad clutched tight, eyes darting toward the courtroom doors. He muttered something under his breath as he passed, something about the husband dropping a bombshell, and I knew. The fuse had been lit. My phone buzzed in my pocket. One text, then another, then a dozen more. Names I hadn't seen in years lit up the screen. Old co-workers from Camille's early days. Partners we'd worked with back when we still looked like a team. One message said, "Is it true?" Another just said, "You did all that." I didn't respond. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to explain or relive it all again. But I read every word, and I let it wash over me. By that evening, headlines had started to pop up. Small sites at first, niche business blogs. A local tech news feed posted a short article calling me the ghost architect behind a rising empire. Elise showed it to me over coffee the next morning, her laptop open to a string of articles. One headline read, "Behind Camille Ror's success stood a silent partner." I just blinked at the screen. I wasn't sure what I was supposed to feel. And then the confirmation started. A marketing guy named Derek, who I hadn't heard from in years, sent me an email. He said he'd always wondered why Camille's early branding efforts had suddenly clicked after a rough stretch. He wrote, "She took the meetings, but the voice always sounded like you." Then came a call from an old PR director. She sounded nervous, apologetic. Said she remembered seeing me sketching at late-night sessions, but had no idea it was for Camille's decks. "I didn't say anything," she said. "I'm sorry." I told her it was all right. I hadn't wanted her to back then, I just wanted to help. But hearing her say it meant more than I expected. And then Patel went public. A small tech CEO I had helped years ago during one of Camille's first investor events posted a short but bold statement online. "Julian Ror saved our launch. Camille didn't even show up to the pitch. He built our deck, our brand, our message. Without him, we would have folded." That one hit hard. It got reposted, retweeted, shared across platforms. Suddenly my name wasn't just a whisper. It was a headline. Not scandalous, not salacious, just the truth finally speaking. Camille's image started to tremble. I heard through contacts that her board was rattled. Investors were asking questions. Some of the early supporters, the ones who believed in her narrative of a solo climb to the top, began to reach out to me quietly. Some wanted clarity. Others wanted to apologize. Her company's stock dipped. Not a freefall, but enough to make headlines. Enough to put sweat on our PR team's brows. There were murmurs about emergency meetings, revised messaging strategies, lawyers scrambling to figure out if they could legally push back against the storm. I didn't push it. I didn't feed it. I didn't call a single reporter or post a single word online. I just stayed quiet. Watched the storm move in. And somewhere in the silence, I realized I didn't need to raise my voice anymore. The evidence had spoken. The people who once looked through me were now seeing clearly. Elise stayed on top of everything. She told me where my name was showing up, where the story was spreading, who was speaking out, but she never gloated, and neither did I. There was no revenge speech, no "I told you so," just the quiet satisfaction of truth settling into place, the same way I'd built all those decks and campaigns. Methodically, precisely, and without the spotlight. Camille's empire wasn't crumbling, but it was shaking, and the part of me that had stayed small for so long no longer felt the need to shrink. I had stepped out of the shadows, not to burn her down, but to be seen. And now the world was watching. Not because I demanded it, but because truth, when given room to breathe, knows how to rise. When the judge stepped back into the courtroom after recess, everything changed. You could feel it in the air. The room went still as she sat down, her face unreadable, but her energy different, heavier, more deliberate. She looked like someone who had spent the last hour carrying the weight of a truth she hadn't expected. My binders sat stacked in front of her, thick with years of work, dog-eared and marked with yellow tabs. I saw her hand rest on the top one for a moment, and I knew she had read it. All of it. I didn't look at Camille. I didn't need to. I could feel her stare burning across the courtroom, sharp and cold. Bellamy sat stiff beside her, shifting papers like that would somehow soften what was coming. Elise sat quietly beside me, her hands folded, her eyes steady. She didn't whisper, didn't tap her pen, just waited, like she'd been here before and already knew how it would play out. The judge raised her gavel, brought it down once, and cleared her throat. "I've reviewed the evidence submitted by Mr. Ror and his counsel," she began, tapping the binders lightly with her pen. "And I've cross-checked it against the claims made by both parties." Her voice was calm but firm, each word landing like a stone in still water. "What's clear is that this case is not as one-sided as it first appeared." I held my breath. I wasn't even sure I was breathing anymore. The judge flipped through her notes, then continued. "Mr. Ror has provided extensive documentation, contracts, correspondence, financial records, design portfolios, that collectively demonstrate a substantial contribution to both the marital estate and the commercial ventures led by Mrs. Ror. These contributions were direct, including creative development, brand strategy and architectural design, and indirect through his establishment of Ror Designs, an entity that significantly influenced investments in Ror's company. I felt my chest loosen, just a little. A breath pushed past my lips without me realizing. She was still talking. The court finds that Mr. Ror's work played a measurable role in the success of the business holdings that are currently claimed as separate property by Mrs. Ror. Furthermore, the traceable financial support provided by Mr. Ror during key development phases, as well as his contributions to intellectual property and brand identity, reflect a joint enterprise that cannot be dismissed. There was a shift in the room, a low stirring of disbelief. On Camille's side, her team sat motionless. Bellamy had stopped rustling papers. Camille didn't blink. Therefore, the judge said, "This court rules that Mr. Ror is entitled to a significant share of the marital assets. This includes 50% of the marital home, a proportionate share of Mrs. Ror's stock holdings, and a retroactive equity stake in her company, based on the valuation at the time of his active contributions." I couldn't move. I could barely think. Ror Designs, she continued, is hereby recognized as a legitimate independent business and not a hobby. Its assets, intellectual property, and client history stand as evidence of Mr. Ror's entrepreneurial agency and will be acknowledged as such under the law. Elise glanced at me then, just for a second. She didn't smile. She didn't need to. The judge laid out the rest. Percentages, dates, legal boundaries. She spoke in numbers and legal codes, but what I heard was simple. I mattered. My work mattered. I wasn't invisible anymore. This ruling reflects the equitable distribution of assets based on the evidence presented, she finished, closing the binder. Mrs. Ror's claims of sole ownership do not hold under scrutiny. Court is adjourned. The gavel cracked one last time, and for a moment no one moved. Then the room broke into whispers. The scrape of chairs, the shuffle of people rising. I sat still. Across from me, Camille didn't move. Her hands were flat on the table, her eyes vacant. Bellamy leaned in, whispering fast, but she didn't respond. She wasn't devastated because she lost the house or the stock. She was devastated because she finally saw it. The foundation she'd built her empire on wasn't hers, it was mine. I stood, slow and steady. Elise rose beside me. No high fives, no cheers, just quiet acknowledgement. I looked at her, and she nodded once. "You got it," she said. I didn't look back at Camille. I didn't need to. Her world was tilting now, and this time, I wasn't the one left in the shadows.
We stepped out of the courthouse into the cold April air, no cameras flashing, no crowd cheering, no reporters chasing a quote. Just the quiet thud of the door shutting behind me and the feel of clean air on my face. It hit me like a reset, like something heavy had been washed off. Elise didn't say anything. She didn't need to. We walked together for a block before she peeled off with a quiet nod, and I kept going. Alone but lighter than I'd felt in years. My phone buzzed in my pocket, probably reporters, curious friends, maybe even some enemies who suddenly wanted to reconnect. I didn't check it. I didn't need to. The victory wasn't in headlines or hashtags. It was in walking away whole, finally, seen for everything I had quietly built, while everyone else looked the other way. A week later, I moved into a small house on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy, just a few clean rooms, sunlight through big windows, and a view of the skyline I'd helped shape. I'd wake up early, sit at the kitchen table with coffee in hand, and look out at those buildings, some of them bearing touches of me, even if no one ever knew it. That quiet sense of ownership felt better than any applause. The first thing I did was reopen RAO Designs, this time under my own name. No more aliases, no more hiding behind someone else's spotlight. I bought a domain, built a simple website, and posted every design, every pitch, every blueprint I'd done over the years. I let the work speak for itself. Within days, emails started rolling in. Small clients at first, startups looking to define their voice, rebrands in crisis, local business owners tired of overpriced consultants, and then the bigger ones. Companies I recognized from Camille's orbit, people who had sat across from her at networking dinners, were now calling me directly. None of them brought up the divorce or the case. They only talked about my vision, my structure, my eye for identity. They wanted what I could do. And that was enough. The media caught on next. Articles with headlines like "The Ghost Architect" and "The Man Behind the Empire" started popping up online. I gave a few interviews, short and quiet. No dirt, no drama. I didn't trash Camille. I didn't need to. I talked about the work, about branding, about architectural symbolism, about how ideas could live in silence but still hold weight. It was surreal seeing my name out there without hers beside it, like I had finally stepped into my own frame. Started a mentorship program not long after. Nothing big, just me and a few overlooked creatives. Students, freelancers, mid-career folks who'd been passed over like I had. We'd meet in a coffee shop downtown. They'd bring sketches, plans, questions. I'd offer what I could. Advice, encouragement, clarity. Not charity, just passing forward what I'd learned the hard way. It grounded me, reminded me that recognition is nice, but Helping someone believe in their own worth is better. Then, one day, about a month after the verdict, I saw her. Camille. She was sitting alone outside a quiet cafe across the street from the design studio I rented. She looked thinner, older, not in years but in energy. Her face was drawn, hair pulled back too tight, makeup faded like she hadn't slept. She was staring into a coffee cup, not drinking, just holding it like it might anchor her. There was no Bellamy beside her, no staff, no press, just her. I stopped walking, not out of hesitation but reflex. For a second we caught eyes across the distance. She looked up and froze. Her gaze was searching for something in me. Guilt? Regret? Maybe some kind of recognition? I didn't give her any of that. I just looked back calmly, let her see me for who I really was, and then I smiled. Not smug, not cruel, just a small, steady smile, like a page had turned. Then I turned away and kept walking. The sun was warm on my back, and I didn't look back. That was the last time I saw her, and I didn't feel heavy or angry. I felt done. I'd spent too long wrapped up in her world. Now I had mine. Mine with real foundation, real value, and my own name on the door.
My mornings look different now. There's no rush, no meetings to prep for someone else, no scrambling to fill in the gaps left by another person's ambition. I wake up when the light hits the window just right. My house isn't big, but it's mine. Paid for with work that carries my name and my name alone. I sit by the window with a mug of coffee, watching the skyline stretch across the horizon. There's a quiet sort of pride in it. I helped shape that city. Not through flashy interviews or public speeches, but through plans, pitches, and blueprints signed in silence. I used to wonder if I'd ever be seen. Now I know I never needed to be famous to matter. Our designs run steady. Not explosive, not viral, steady. We're not chasing clout. We're solving problems. Every client that walks through the door knows what I do and who I am. There's no more ghosting, no more hiding behind someone else's curtain. I don't second guess anymore when I hand over a draft or step into a pitch meeting. I don't have to wonder if someone will speak over me. I'm the voice in the room now. I'm the decision maker, the one who owns the outcome. The mentorship program turned into something I didn't expect. I thought I'd be helping a few people figure out design portfolios or branding language, but what I'm really doing is helping them believe their ideas matter, that their quiet voices deserve space too. We meet weekly now, not in some formal conference room, but in a little co-working space near downtown. There's coffee, scribbled notes on napkins, laughter, and sometimes tears. They bring stories of rejection and redirection. I bring the lessons I learned from being invisible for too long. And in that space, something real gets built. Not just business plans, but resilience, confidence, voice. The kind of things I had to earn, the hard way. People still ask me about Camille sometimes. Journalists, former friends, even a couple of her past investors who now want to work with me. I never badmouth her. There's no need. Her story speaks for itself now. They saw the trial, read the headlines, connected the dots. They know. And honestly, I don't think about her much anymore. That cafe encounter was the last chapter I needed to close. She looked hollow that day, like she finally realized the cost of building a kingdom without checking the foundation. I don't feel anger when I remember her, just distance, like a mountain I climbed and left behind. The revenge people think they see in my story isn't the real ending. It's not about beating her or taking what was mine. It's about finally seeing myself clearly. It's about knowing I never needed to scream to be heard. I just needed to stop whispering to myself. The validation didn't come from a court ruling or a trending hashtag. It came from walking into my studio and seeing my name on the wall, from watching a young designer I mentor land their first client, from sitting in silence and knowing that I am enough, without anyone else's stamp of approval. I don't chase legacy, I build it, one honest brick at a time. In quiet impact, in the lives I touch, in the work I do with care. The world tried to erase me, tried to tuck me behind the scenes and rewrite the credits, but I rewrote the script instead. And not for applause, for truth, for peace, for the next version of me, the one who never disappears again. That's the real victory. Not that I won, but that I finally belong to myself.